Welcome to Make Shit Happen. My guest today is Red Laughlin. Thank you so much, Red, for taking the drive and coming this time to meet me. And I appreciate it. I'm so appreciative that you came and joined me.
I am so honored to be here, Sam. I really and truly am.
You know, when I talked to you over the phone and I saw your LinkedIn profile and then I spoke to you over the phone, it intrigued me so much, you know, and your philosophy about longevity and how people can live a long, healthy life. And I was so intrigued. And this whole week, this last 7 days since I first spoke to you, I've been really just so excited about this interview, more than I've ever been. So I appreciated really you coming. I hope me, my audience, and the world get to learn a lot about your philosophies about health, wellness, and longevity.
I'm here to answer any question you have on that.
And you know, I appreciate you bringing me these books, The Joy of Ageless Health, Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging, and I know you have another book, which was the first book that you wrote, No Matter What You Can Do It. Now, total, you have written 5 books.
That is correct, 5.
But the other 2 are right now. You're pulling them back.
I have pulled them back and reorganizing them for more current information. It'll be a second edition of both.
Okay, so the first one you did was No Matter What You Can Do It. You have Joy of Ageless Health, Longevity Secrets for Health Living. What are the other 2 books called, if you don't mind? I mean, is it okay to know, even though you have pulled them back?
One book deals with weight loss. No matter what you can, it's the same kind of thing as no matter what. It's how to lose weight without really trying, basically. But it's an analysis of how fat actually chemically goes into a fat cell and what causes it to go in there and what causes it chemically to come out, then what causes fat to burn and what stops it from burning. And so if you understand the mechanics of fat movement and fat burning, then you can adjust your lifestyle because you know why things happen. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things in my life that I find that if I understand why something works or doesn't work, I can make a much better decision and stick with it than I can if I just know how something happens.
Exactly. And so right now you're trying to update it with all the new things that have come out.
Basically, yes, both books were written about 10 years ago. I updated the No Matter What You Can Do It, but that didn't take me just a couple days to tweak things in. But the other 2 books, there's some serious changes in both of them.
And, you know, I was really curious about No Matter What You Do It, since that was your first book. And what made you write that book, and how did you come on writing that book?
Back in the 2010 timeframe, I was actively involved in a personal improvement program.
Okay.
I was unaware prior to my wife's involvement with a multi-level marketing training program that we could actually train ourselves to become better people. Mm-hmm. All the training I'd got for years in the military, for years in academia, for years in my businesses that I work with, everything was oriented toward improving the company, not necessarily improving the individual. Then all of a sudden, I saw it from the other side of the table. Wow, I can actually improve myself. And I ran into the who's who of self-improvement up in Dallas on a long weekend. I affiliated myself over time with a guy named Myron Golden, and he invited me to become his mentee. And I started following him. I went to his house up in Pennsylvania. I'd follow him around the country. I'd speak on his events. I would sell my books and my CDs at the back of the room. And he was saying, you really need to have a book to be introduced to have credibility. And so that's exactly what I started doing. I created a book based on Dr. Maxwell Maltz's book, Psycho-Cybernetics, which deals with how does the subconscious mind actually work? What can you do to change something in the brain to make yourself better than what you are? We have a standard way of looking and saying and thinking. But if you understand what the subconscious brain is capable of, then it makes it a whole lot easier to make changes in your life. And that's what I wrote the first one on, because at that point in time, I was on self-improvement. My wife came down with cancer about 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. I got involved taking that same approach of looking at what's going in. Years ago, when I first started out speaking, I would ask, Sam, do you remember your first love? Mm-hmm. And I would tell you, my first love was chemistry. I still have my first love is chemistry. Even though I married my wife, I've been married 52 years, my first love is chemistry. Well, back then, I got a degree in it, but I got an invitation to Vietnam, so I couldn't do anything with it. I came back, and it's been on the shelf for 50 years. And now I have 6 Saturdays and a Sunday every single week. And what I do is I love to research what goes on in the human body at the cellular level. Chemically speaking, I look for the cause and effect relationships. If you treat a symptom, you'll always treat a symptom. You have to treat the cause to get rid of a problem. So I started looking in there on cancer. What causes these things? What causes all this stuff? What can you do? What can you stop this? If this causes, how can you inhibit this? Or if I need more of this, how can I get that? And so that's when I started really studying to help her in her treatments. And one of the things I found out was I could treat almost every side effect that she was having with her chemos except for fatigue. No matter what I did, fatigue, she was taking 1 or 2 2-hour naps a day. It didn't matter. However, one of the books I read in between her chemo and her radiation, she had months of chemo, was a book called The Walls Protocol by Dr. Terry Walls. She's an internist. I think she's an internist. Anyway, she had multiple sclerosis late in life. No matter what the doctors did, it got worse and worse, in a wheelchair forever. And then all of a sudden, she writes this book, The Walls Protocol. And I read it. I said, Marilyn, this woman had this. She was years in a wheelchair. She put herself on her own program. Within 3 months, she was out of her wheelchair, walking with a walker. A month later, she's walking with a cane. By the end of the year, she's bicycling 18 miles. I said, what does it hurt us to try? So we started on day 1 of radiation. And that day 1, we changed our diet. There's 4 parts of our program. We just changed the diet. In 48 hours, she's never had another nap. Within 7 days, she was volunteering her time back up at the church. The last day of radiation, we left Houston, Texas, drove to Jacksonville, Florida. I rented a U-Haul. She followed me by herself 500 miles each day in a car back here 2 days. That was 48 hours after her last radiation treatment. Fatigue was gone. Diet. These little things start saying there has to be something in nutrition that is really and truly super important that can wipe out months of chemo, weeks of radiation fog, literally overnight. And so that's what I started looking into. What causes us to age? Well, there's 2 primary causes. I mean, there's lots of factors. But when you look at the causes, well, if this is happening naturally, how can we change something? Well, yes, we can. There's things we can do. But if I said, Sam, tell me 2 or 3 causes of aging, we'd probably be stuck because we don't know. It's not something we're taught. And if I say, well, how do you stop that? Well, again, I don't know. Well, I don't smoke. I keep your weight that way. Eat, but those are things, but we really don't know the details. So, and that's what I did in my book on the longevity secrets. I discussed the 2 real key problems that increase the aging in our bodies. I'm 74, and I every single year I get an annual physical. I rarely ever have any test that's out of normal. I mean, everything I have is within the normal. That's the way I've been. I had 31 flight physicals in the military. I've had 20 physicals annual. I just had one this October. I had one last month. I believe I'm an advocate for annual physicals. If you don't know where you stand, how can you improve anything? How do you know you're going downhill?
Yeah.
I always order extra tests with my annual physicals. One's a CRP, C-reactive protein. It tells you how much inflammation you have in the body. And so when you have a high level of inflammation, 99+% of all disease starts at chronic low-level inflammation in the body, cellular level. If CRP measures that, and every time I get a test and it's almost unmeasurable because it's down in that 0.0 something range, then that tells me I probably don't have anything to worry about. And the same thing I want to know about my heart. Well, a homocysteine level used to be the gold standard. There's another one now, but it's still a cheap blood test, and it gives you really good information. You've probably heard about vitamin D3, particularly here with the COVID world going on. I have a vitamin D3 I add because I know that when you have cancer or other things, you want that level of vitamin D3 at a certain place. Well, I figured that in the wintertime I take more, summertime I let off. Because of COVID, I'm keeping my winter regimen up. Well, I took it and I have slightly over 100 of the nanograms per deciliter that I need for that particular vitamin. But I also know it's protecting me very, very strongly in addition to everything else I'm doing. So it's understanding how does the body work in order to inhibit those things you don't want and just build up the ones you can. That 72-hour fast we were talking about just a few minutes ago, that was one that when I read about it, it says, well, it causes your immune system, which is about 80% of your gut, to get rid of all of the damaged DNA, get rid of all the non-functioning cells, because all of a sudden you're on the cusp of starving to death, and the body doesn't want to carry around all those cells that aren't working. So it figures out which ones it doesn't need, tosses them out, and now all of a sudden you have an immune system from scratch that's just banging to go. I do it every month. And
so you're telling me that the 72-hour fast is one of the way to get rid of the inflammation, get rid of the, give you gut like a healthy restart?
It's not necessarily to get rid of inflammation. That's another part of the equation when you look at what causes inflammation and how do you get rid of it. But if I'm looking at what is the reason I do a 72-hour fast, it's number one for my immune system. I want my immune system at my age. I have no diseases. I have no prescription meds. I'm about as healthy as I can be, other than a minor thing I had here, but that's something I do every 4 months. But I want my body to be primed as good as it can be, as healthy as it can be. Now, when you look at inflammation, part of the thing on the Walls protocol, I said that my wife kicked fatigue literally in 48 hours. Well, that deals with getting the right kinds of nutrients in the body, about 30 nutrients the body needs on a daily basis. You flood it with those nutrients and you don't flood it with the other things it doesn't need, then all of a sudden you're fighting inflammation down at the cellular level all day long because you have that right mixture. One antioxidant does not equal every single inflammatory response in the body. So you need a little bit of parsley, a little bit of kale, a little bit of spinach, a little bit of blueberries. You need a little bit of all different kinds of molecular phytonutrients and the vitamins and minerals in order to have those things in the body so they're operating properly. And when you have that, then you have the health. So you get rid of the inflammation. Your heart is healthy because you're not worried about those other things that are in there causing it to go. You look younger, you feel younger. Typically I may take maybe 1 or 2 6, 8, 10-minute naps a week, just on the norm. But when I'm fasting, and I've been doing 120 plus hour fast now for the last 5 months, I find that when I'm fasting, I don't have any need to take a nap. I just feel good all the time. It's interesting. Now, if I was to tell you, Sam, I'm going to start a 120-hour fast tomorrow, I couldn't do that. It's a mindset. I have to actually talk myself into it for a couple of days. I've done it, but it's not as fun. It's hard. But if I know and I tell you, Sam, I think on Monday I'm going to do a 100-hour fast, and I tell my wife that, and I tell a couple of friends that. I have accountability because I've told people. I know it's going to happen. I know it's easy to do. Okay, I'm going to start right there. And it's amazing how easy it is when you turn your mindset. You're talking to your subconscious brain about how to do things. And as you're readjusting that mindset, occasionally I might get a little pang for 10 seconds of something, but I take a glass of water, it's gone. And that's all I have is water and unsweet tea during my fast.
So during your fast, you're just doing water?
Water, unsweet tea. That's it.
Unsweet tea.
That's it.
Okay. You drinking any green tea or any herbal tea?
Oh, I have 6 different teas that I drink on a regular basis.
Okay.
I drink green tea, white tea, oolong, pu'er, gynostemma, and pochong. Those are the ones I make every single day.
And you drinking those during the fast?
I drink those during the fast.
Now, so some people might hear this, 120 hours fast, 72-hour fast, 100-hour fast, and they might think, man, that's extreme. I'm like, that's crazy. I'll be hangry because some people, they can barely make it between breakfast and lunch, let alone be 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, I mean, it's difficult.
Well, maybe part of it, you have a habit.
Uh-huh.
Your body's expecting it. It's a habit. You wake up, you want to have coffee. You wake up, you want to have something to eat. However, a lot of times that little pang in the stomach is dehydration. And that's all it is. It's telling your body saying, I need something, and you're interpreting it as food, when in reality, maybe all it is liquids. Take and have 4, 8, 12 ounces of, first thing I have every morning is usually about 10 to 12 ounces of water. Fresh water, filtered. That's the first thing I take. Before I do anything, before I brush my teeth, I have my water. I have flooded my body. I know that I'm no longer dehydrated. My mindset is I generally don't even eat till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so I have my tea off and on. I'll go back, maybe have some water. And that's all I have typically during the day.
So when you told me this last week, hey, about the 72-hour fast, I started talking to myself that day, and I'm like, the next day, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try to fast for 24 hours. And the 24 hours led to 40 hours. And I'm like, you know what, I'll do it for 40 hours. And I think I might have been able to do it for 48 or 72 hours. You never know. But I'm like, I want to do a slow start. If someone is listening to this and they're like, man, I don't want to do 72 hours, do you suggest that to take some baby steps towards the 72 hours?
Great question, because the number one cause that I list in my book on Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging is that as we get older, one of the things our body doesn't make much anymore of is the thing called human growth hormone. When you're in your toddler years, you're just making tons of it. When you're a kid, it's just pouring out. You're a teenager, it's starting to slow down. In your 20s, okay, it's just starting to taper off. You get in your 50s and 60s, it's starting to go over the edge of the waterfall. Your 70s and 80s, you're hardly making any at all. But it is the hormone that's in control of everything in your body. and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore. And when nobody's in control, chaos. That's everything is kind of
Shutting
willy
down.
nilly. So if human growth hormone is in control and it's controlling all the other hormones, and you're getting the right mix of nutrients that you need on a daily basis, well, one of the things that fasting does is that it creates a automatic creation of human growth hormone. So you go 12, 15, 18 hours, which is a typical intermittent fasting. You eat for 6 or 8 hours a day, and then you fast for the other
16 hours.
And so if you're set up to do a 15-hour fast every single day, you're increasing your human growth hormone. You do 24 hours, and then all of a sudden the human growth hormone's back up to when you're 40 years of age. You go another 30, now all of a sudden you're making human growth hormone like you're a teenager. And that is one of the benefits of the fasting. It does a lot of things. It allows the body finally to relax, to repair itself properly. Your liver is taking in and processing stuff all the time. You take a little bit of a fast, now all of a sudden the organs don't have to just work 24/7. They actually have a chance to relax, repair themselves, and do the jobs that they were meant to do. And so the fasting it's great for the brain because you're no longer feeding it the carbs and everything else in there that may disrupt it. Your type 3 diabetes that we're talking about with a lot of the ADD, ADHD, with the sugar and just a lot of things that are sugar related. But you go on that fast, mental clarity is there. Your body feels good because you're not, even though you're not having food, it just feels great. Now, the one thing that I was unable to do, and I'm still training myself, is I used to run hour and a half a day several years ago. I switched over to running sprints. I do 10, 12, 15, 100-yard sprints, each one faster than the previous one. And that's my cardiovascular exercise. And so I'm finding that in the middle of 70, 80 hours of fasting, I don't have any glycogen in my muscles. I can't do that. So I kind of trade off. When I'm fasting, I don't do a lot of intense workout. Mm-hmm. So I trade off a little bit, but that's not a big deal. But your body repairs itself. It gets back into the norm. Now, this 72 hours is not something that should picked off the wall. This is done by a Dr. Walter Longo, University of Southern California. And they found that 72 hours causes this immune system. And they've taken it a step further and now incorporating the 72-hour fast with chemotherapy, because they looked at the biomarkers of chemo and the biomarkers of 72-hour fasting, and they found that they're both pretty equal. But if you put them together, you get exponential protection because the fasting causes the good cells to be very resistant to the chemo. And the chemo is more directed toward the cancer cells. So all of a sudden, now they're using 72-hour fasting and chemotherapy to heal cancer a heck of a lot faster.
At a faster pace. So are you telling me that patients who have cancer can fast for 72 hours and take chemotherapy, have a higher result of success, than a higher rate of success versus patients who just take chemotherapy and don't do 72-hour fast?
Well, I can't tell you that because I'm not a doctor. What I can tell you is the studies that they're doing and the results that they've published is that they do the 72-hour fast along with the chemo at the same time.
For a better chance of success.
And the biomarkers show a much better focus of the chemo on the cancer cells and a much higher protection on the healthy cells that the chemotherapy drug is not attacking. And so their results are the patients are healing much faster. And they went further. They found it in animal studies, 120-hour fast basically causes the pancreas to reset itself with the beta cells, which becomes your source of insulin. So if you have, and in some of the animal studies have actually been able to correct type 1 diabetes, but type 2 diabetes, if you get in there and you readjust and get rid of the damaged beta cells, then all of a sudden now your pancreas is much more sensitive to insulin. You're no longer insulin resistant. And you can probably, they're working on the human studies in order to get 120-hour fast to work with overcoming type 2 diabetes. Now, they're not looking at fasting as no food, no drink. They're actually looking at what they call a fasting mimicking diet, an FMD, where you can actually eat some kinds of foods, but it fools the body into thinking it's still fasting. So there's some things there with the longer fast. Now, I find I've done, I think, 130-some hour fast. One of the guys that I speak with on a monthly basis, he just finished an 11-day fast, just water only. We hear these big terms, but once you're in the zone, you're in the zone. I mean, I'm sitting there at 100 hours, 120 hours, and I'm thinking, you know, Sam, I could probably go another 20 hours, 24 hours without anything. And then you're not sitting there craving anything. You're just sitting there saying, well, I think it's time to stop. It's just that was my end goal. Let's declare victory and move on. And so I will generally have a soup or salad or something light, and try to get back into my normal mixture of, I want all of my nutrients as I can get, but I want them gradually. I don't want to just come in and overpower my stomach with something that I haven't eaten for 5 days.
So that's what my next thing was going to say, that after the fast, when they break the fast, they should take it slowly.
Well, think about it. Your stomach,
not order a pizza or a double cheeseburger.
Well, probably a pizza and a 6-pack of beer is not the best solution for that. But the thing is, your stomach has had a chance to subside a little bit, and it just makes sense. Just have a smaller meal, half a salad, relax for a few hours, come back and have the other half of the salad. You know, have a half a bowl of soup, but don't force anything. Don't go into just chronic pizza mode where you're overpowering the brain and the body with sugar. It's something that you've already cleansed everything out. Why do you want to go back and destroy it in 12 hours?
So I heard you say sugar a couple of times, like, and the way you said it, like sugar is the enemy. What do you think about that? I mean, am I reading it right?
I think anything in modicum is fine, whether it's a glass of wine or a donut. You're probably going to be fine if that's all you have all week long, and maybe 2 bites of the donut and put it down. You've met that sensation in your body that you wanted. The taste is there. You've overcome that. But it's that you can't eat just one, and then all of a sudden it becomes 2 cookies or another piece of pie or whatever it may happen to be. It's like when your subconscious mind says, you say, I'm not going to have a cookie. Well, the subconscious mind doesn't understand the concept of no. It hears, I'm going to have a cookie, because it doesn't understand not. And so all of a sudden you're reinforcing, I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to have. Then it's going to have it because you're telling yourself emphatically, I'm going to have it, because it doesn't understand the word not. It's like, I'm going to do this diet. Well, one of the parts of the subconscious mind is the fact that its main directive in life, prime directive in life, is to protect you from harm. And failure in your subconscious mind's brain is harm. And so if you were successful at a diet, mark 1 up for success. If you had failure, mark 1 up over here. Okay, you've had 1 success, 1 failure, it doesn't really know. But if all of a sudden I've had 4, 8, 12 failures, 0 successes, and you want to do another diet, it's going to look up there and say, I got 12 failures. I don't think this is a good idea. It's going to do everything in its power to make you not failing. It doesn't. It's kind of a double negative.
Yeah.
So it's going to actually push you away from what you want, which is to lose weight through a diet, and put you back into, because it doesn't want you failing at the diet. So it's a strange way of looking at failure is success in the sense that you're not going to fail because it's going to drive you right back into failure again. So you have to look at how do you set. So maybe instead of saying, I'm going to go on a diet, you're saying, I'm going to eat healthier. But again, the subconscious mind does not understand future tense. It only understands present tense. So if you're saying, I will do this, it doesn't understand will. So you have to look at, I am eating healthy every day. Well, that's something that I can comprehend because it's present tense. But if you say, tomorrow I'm going to do this, it doesn't. Subconscious mind does not understand that. But the subconscious mind also doesn't understand the difference between real and reality. So in other words, you're sitting in a movie theater, and all of a sudden something happens and you jump. Your body's reacting to it. You know it's a movie. You're sitting there, but the brain is seeing reality, and the reality is the movie. It's not reality. So anything that you can do to tell your brain that you're successful at whatever you want to do, it puts a little mark up there in the success column. And if you can tie success to an emotion, now all of a sudden it gets maybe 2 or 3 extra ticks because it keeps it all at the front part of the brain. Now I tell people when I'm speaking, I says, how do you tie an emotion to something? When you were a kid, you rode a bicycle, right?
Yes, of course.
You may even have ridden a bicycle, or you probably know somebody who rode a bicycle barefoot.
I'm sure.
And can you imagine what happens to a toe that hits the concrete as you're riding a bicycle? You can feel that. That's a visceral feeling. That's something. That kind of feeling, whether it's the toe hurting or some pleasure or something. You want to attach a feeling, an emotion to that goal that you want to achieve. So if it's eating healthy, if it's losing weight, whatever it is, it's something that you want to do. This is a common practice for a lot of Olympic athletes, is the fact that they have the ability to visualize their success standing on stage with the gold, and they hear the audience, they feel they everything, every auditory, the smells, everything that they can incorporate into their being, they're using that to enhance that success in their subconscious mind. So let's say I have a lime and I want to smell that, and I'm thinking, success, whatever my success is, my goal. Then every time I smell that, it becomes an odor. It adds to that emotion. So I'm trying to build on that. If I'm listening to whatever that I want, who's the guy who just died? Ennio Morricone, the guy who did Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and another couple hundred. He's a great musician for having music to get you enthused. If you want to listen to 2 or 3 minutes of some of his stuff before you do something, it just kind of gets your body.
Get you moving.
And so you can use the music, you can use just sounds, whatever that really tune you in. Maybe it's a seashore, maybe it's a waterfall, maybe it's thunder, maybe it's rain. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's something that you tie with an aroma, a hearing, a seeing, you visualize. Those are things that you're starting to train your subconscious mind for that successful attainment of whatever you're trying to do. And as you're going through, these are the things that work with longevity, with diet, with everything in life. You're talking about having 100 of these. You'll probably have 100 of these before the end of the year, I'm sure, at the rate you're going. That's a big mark. That's pretty.
We do 1 every week, or 2 every week, so sure it'll be done before the end of November. So now let me ask you a question. Let's switch gears back again to longevity. Okay, first of all, let's explain the listeners and the audience, what do you mean by longevity?
Longevity, in my terminology, is nothing more than just getting older. Now, you have
getting what? Older.
Getting older.
Okay.
I wake up every morning, and one of the little mantras that I do to myself is, I am going to live another 35 years in perfect health. I'm living, I'm priming myself for 35
Let me interrupt you right there. You say you wake up every morning, and that's what you're telling yourself.
That's one of the things I go through.
Are you telling that because are you training your subconscious mind?
I am training my subconscious mind.
Okay.
So I'm telling myself I have another 30, 35 years. That puts me at about 109, 110 years of age is what so if my mind knows that's what I want, and it's going to help me get there, I have to do the other things to get me. So the mind is part of the equation. I have to eat healthy in order to keep age-related diseases there. So if I keep my human growth hormone up, then I should be able to fight off a lot of these other ones. If I keep my antioxidants up, I can fight off the inflammation. So I got to look at all the different parts of the equation and feed these things in so that as I'm aging, I have the right components of the things I need. I have almost nothing of the things I don't need. And then as I'm aging, I'm still maintaining. I get an annual physical every year. I know if I'm starting to decrease a little bit. Let's say that all of a sudden my C-reactor protein, instead of being 0 point whatever, is now 2 or 3. Well, that's not a big deal, but if it's 20 or 30, it's a big deal. It won't tell you where something's at, but I can go to my doctor and say, hey, we need to start looking. Something's going on.
So your CRP is the one that tells you your information level.
That general body information, not specific, just general.
Body inflammation.
Yeah, okay. Body inflammation. And it's a simple blood test. It's usually around 40, 50, 60 bucks. It's pretty cheap.
So longevity means how, getting old, how long am I going to live and everything. You said eat healthy. People always hear that, right? Eat healthy. Have antioxidants. Yeah. Do this, do that. How does one know what is healthy, what is not healthy? Okay,
there's 3 parts to the healthy eating. One is getting the nutrients you need. The other part is how many calories you're actually taking in with those nutrients. And the third one deals with the alkalinity or the acidity of what you have. So let's start with the first one on the nutrients.
Okay.
According to the Wahls Protocol, and Wahls is spelled W-A-H-L-S. Terry Wahls is the author of that book.
Wahls, W-A-H-L-S, Protocol?
Wahls Protocol.
Okay.
And what she says in her book is you need 4 things in order to have a nice, healthy age.
Okay.
And part of her Wall's protocol is diet. And I'll talk about diet in just a second. But the other ones deal with toxin removal. So if you're reading labels and you know what not to have, then you really need to be a connoisseur of labels. So you have toxin removal, stress management, which we really need to be doing almost hourly. We have stress we don't even realize sometimes. Exercise. So you have toxin removal, stress management, exercise, and then you have diet. Those are her 4 principles, her 4 protocols, 4 pillars. Okay, what is diet to her? Okay, she says there are 4 things you need to have every single day. One is a cup of leafy green vegetables.
Okay.
Now, this is 1 meal. She says 3 meals a day. I found I can't eat 3 meals a day like she does. But 1 cup of leafy green vegetables. I'll generally have 5, 6, 7, 8 different kinds of vegetables, leafy green, depending on what I'm buying at the time. 1 cup of colored fruits and vegetables. This is where the color goes all the way through the fruit. So if you're thinking about a blueberry versus an eggplant, the color has to go all the way through. Now, berries are perfectly good solid foods for any person interested in phytonutrients as opposed to watermelon or some other things. But regardless, you want to have the colored fruits and vegetables where the color goes all the way through the fruit. Then you have 1 cup of sulfur-laden vegetables. These are generally your Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and things like that. I'm not an aficionado of that kind of food, so I do mushrooms and onions, but I saute them with coconut oil. So I have a half a cup of sauteed as opposed to a cup of raw. But most of my stuff is raw. But if you saute your vegetables, it's a half a cup. So I've got 1 cup of leafy green vegetables, 1 cup of colored fruits and vegetables, to me a half a cup of sauteed mushrooms and onions, sulfur-laden vegetables. Sulfur is needed for the cellular repair in the body.
Uh-huh.
And then 3 to 4 ounces of high-quality protein. Now, what I've done is I tell my audiences, change your protein every 48 hours. Do not have the same protein within a 48-hour window. So if today I had salmon, tomorrow I'll probably have chicken or beef or something, but I will not have the same protein within a 48-hour window because I'm training my body to extract out the amino acids and the other things that I need from different sources rather than having chicken 5 days a week. And so if I'm looking at those kinds of things, and I'm also getting the different other elements in fish or poultry or beef or whatever else I may be eating. So those things provide you over 30 nutrients the body needs on a daily basis. Now, what have I not mentioned? Haven't talked about sugars. Haven't talked about carbohydrates, pizza, beer. I haven't talked about most of the things that we eat. Now, when I did talk about something that was good, the protein, I'm saying 3 to 4 ounces, which is not quite the size of the palm of your hand. So you're really low.
In moderation.
In moderation, and you can have maybe 2. To me, we started out with trying to do 3 meals because that's what her book said. We found out we couldn't. So my wife and I will generally have what we call about a meal and a half. And I switched. First thing I did was I went to smaller portion control. I don't eat anything less than a salad plate. 1 plate only. So in other words, you go into a restaurant and it's all you can eat. Pick the smallest plate you can have, and that's all you get.
That's all you get.
But caloric restriction is what's called. And typically, nutritionists will tell you need 15 calories per pound to maintain body weight. So if you have 100 pounds, that's 1,500 calories, 200 pounds, 3,000 calories. But in reality, the body thrives at about 10 calories per pound of body weight. So 1,000 calories for 100 pounds, 2,000 calories for 200 pounds. So just like I was talking about earlier with the body being on that threshold of starvation, and it's getting rid of things. When you're on calorie-restricted diet and you put animals on it, they live 30, 40% longer, whether they're one-celled or four-legged creatures. And the same thing with us. We haven't really tested it long enough in experimentation. But if it works for all the rest of the animal kingdom, that all of a sudden you restrict the diet, the animals look younger. They're not as impacted by the same diseases that their cousins on the other side of the track are having. If you split them into 2 separate groups, you don't feed this one as much. You feed this one as much as they want. These will die earlier. They'll have more diseases late in life. These will have hardly any diseases late in life. They'll look younger and be just as functional as they were earlier in life.
Does that also mirror like when a person who is obese and all of a sudden they lose weight and all of a sudden they look younger, look more vibrant, have more better color, better skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what you are saying, it kind of it kind of justifies that the theory that you're saying that when you give them less food or when you or they're exercising and they look better, look younger, versus person who's eating all you can eat and he's at the buffet line all day long every day, eating CC's pizza every day.
Yeah. So you need the as I said earlier, you need the nutrients that you have to have on a daily basis. You have to have restriction in calories. So if you can get all of these 30 nutrients that you need into 1,000 calories or 800 or 1,200, it doesn't matter, and you can have those every day, then you have fewer calories, all the nutrients you need. The other thing, part of the equation, is what they call pH. It's whether your body is acidic or alkaline.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you look at what causes the body to become alkaline, fruits and vegetables, nothing else. What causes the body to become acidic? Breathing, exercising, thinking, fats, carbohydrates, proteins. Basically, the foods that you abstain from on a Wahls kind of protocol will keep you pretty much in the alkaline range. But you still have, if you're out running for an hour a day, a half hour a day, if you're stressed out over things, these are things that you need to do. But there's a simple test. It's essentially a little piece of paper. You touch it to your tongue, it turns a color. You look at the scale, and it'll tell you what your pH is. And I used to do that every morning and evening just to kind of see, so I know really where but your blood stays at a 7.4 pH, plus or minus.
Now, let me ask you a question. So you said the diet, then you said stress management is also a big part with the Wahls, is a Wahls protocol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people have stress nowadays. I mean, we live in this society, with this COVID climate. I mean, just everything that's going on, the elections, political, everything that's going on around the world. A lot of injustice, all these rallies, all these protests. Stress can be high at this time right now, especially in 2020.
Stress is there whether you want it to be or not. It's not what the stress is. It's what you accept. It's what you grab a hold of and won't let go. That is what you have to manage, is what's inside that grasp that you have.
And now stress can really age you.
Oh, absolutely. Big time.
Okay. And that is the negative for longevity.
Negative for longevity is that part of the equation. You look at stress. If you're not managing it properly, yes, you will actually look haggard, and it'll show up in your face. It'll show up in your ability to do anything. There's a lot of aspects of that are going to be problematic. But stress is there whether you want it or not. It's not what the stress is. It's what you do to yourself that allow it. Now, I can tell you, Sam, take a deep breath and hold it for 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Well, 30 minutes is probably not realistic, but 30 seconds generally, that's a good stress reliever. But I got an even better one from that. Let's say you leave here tonight and you're going home, and down the road here there's a red light that is very short, and if there's more than two cars in front of it, you're probably going to have to sit through the light again. Mm-hmm. Let's say that the light turns green, and there's two cars ahead of you, and nobody's moving.
Yeah.
And you're in a hurry because you got to see somebody. All of a sudden, your stress levels are starting to spiral upward. Now, all of a sudden, the light turns yellow, and the first car decides to go. Now you're stuck behind the car behind the one that's in front of you.
Number two.
What do you do in a situation like that? You could take a deep breath, but it's not quite the same thing. Let me tell you why this particular method works so well. Smile. You can't have a negative thought and a positive thought in your brain at the same time. If you have negative thoughts, you can read them on a person's face easily. Mm-hmm. But the same thing is you force a smile, even if it's forced, even if it's laughter. I mean, I do this little spiel, and I'll laugh out loud for 30 seconds, just hilariously laughing out loud, and then just cut it off in a heartbeat. And you can force laughter too. It forces things into the brain. But a smile changes the facial aura, and it forces things up where whatever is bothering you can't bother you anymore. So by the time that you finally get to the green light, you've forgotten about the idiot that was up there 2 minutes ago, because it no longer has that impact that you're upset. Yeah, you're running late. Well, maybe you were tied up. Who knows why? It doesn't matter. Why carry that extra stress? Because now you're taking it home with you. And yeah, you may be over it, but stress is cumulative. It starts creating more cortisol and other hormones in the body that you don't want. And cortisol loves to store it in fat around the gut. Each one of these cells down here have 4 times the number of receptors for cortisol than it does for anything else. So as you're managing stress, you're getting rid of some of this stuff here. You're not allowing it in. But, are you familiar with EFT, emotional freedom techniques? No. It's the one where you do the tapping and you do a mantra with it. That's a very good way. I find that I can use that to remove stress. Now, for me,
So
when
just tap in between your ears and your eyes, underneath your eyes.
I tell people go to YouTube and put in EFT and whatever they want to get rid of.
EFT?
Emotional freedom techniques.
Wow.
And so, let's say you want to do EFT and weight loss, EFT and stress relief, EFT and whatever in life. Now, sometimes I want to do focused on getting stuff done during the day. I'll get out of the gym in the morning and I'll sit in the car for 8 or 10 minutes and I'll just do this little routine where I'm doing my tapping and I get myself focused. And I get stuff on my to-do list I wiped out because I'm focused. But you can use EFT for a number of things, but stress relief is a good one. There are some Japanese exercises where you can use pressure points in the little webbing between your fingers and down here on your wrist. There are pressure points you can use. There are breathing exercise, pranayamas, where you're looking at holding the breath. There's different kinds. There's about 7 primary ones that I go through periodically. But whether it's control breathing, you have the guttural breathing, it's just a lot of different breathing exercises. And these all deal with stress and other issues. So breathing, pressure points, tapping, smiling, laughter. Sometimes all you need is just pick up a book and read for 5 minutes. Just take your mind off everything else.
Yeah, do something that'll take your mind off.
The easiest way, get rid of the stressor. If it's your wife, you may not be able to get rid of her that easy. But you can move yourself into a different room until you're calmed down. If it's your boss, again, you may not be able to get rid of him or her in a meeting, but as soon as you let it go. I did the Camino de Santiago about 4 years ago with my wife. She did it because what's that?
In Spain.
In Spain. That's a 500-mile walk in 30 days that we did. She was doing it in part of her Thanksgiving for being totally healed from cancer in a year. I did it as my Let It Go tour. I said, no matter what happens, let it go. And I must have said, let it go 100 times a day. And then finally, I start, something, let it go. Just let it go. And if you let it go, it's not there. You're not hanging on to it. The stress is not there with you. You just live what is there and what's provided. And so the stress is a big, big part of your life. If you want to be a healthy person, not having somebody change your diaper for 5 years at the end of your life, don't stress out about a lot of things. But we have we don't know. We're not aware of these things. So that's why you're doing podcasts, to make people aware of a lot of things that they're not aware of. This is one little niche in that big awareness horizon that you're filling people in on.
Yeah. And I mean, I intend to do this for a long time. And, I get to learn a lot, from people like you. So stress management, that's another one. Why is exercise so important?
One of the other issues with regard to aging is at the end of your DNA, there's a little telomere. It's people equate it to the plastic tip on a shoelace. It holds the DNA together. And when you're doing that little caplet, every time the cell replicates, it becomes 2, and then it becomes 4. So every time you lose just a little bit of that little plastic caplet, it's called a telomere. And if you're smoking and drinking and stressed and overweight, you lose a big chunk of that each time. But if you're healthy and you don't have disease, you have a lot of things going for you, then you're losing just the minimal amount. But what happens at the end of that telomere, when it's done, it's done. That cell dies. It's no longer in business. So if you're taking off big chunks, I usually use a roll of pennies as a demonstration. If the roll of pennies is my length of my telomere, then every time that the cell replicates, becomes 2, I throw a penny away. At some point in time, I get down around 4 or 5 pennies, that cell is no longer functional. But if I'm throwing 4 pennies away every time instead of 1, that cell is going to age very quickly and be gone. In telomere length, the longer your telomeres, the longer your natural life is going to be, and the healthier your life is going to be. In the first part of our discussion on longevity, I talked about human growth hormone, intense physical exercise. I told you I run 100-yard sprints. That intense, high-intensity interval training builds up human growth hormone. So when I'm not fasting, I'm doing high-intensity exercise. But if I'm just go out and do just normal walking, maybe a little bit of running, maybe a little bit of weights, some balance, other kinds of things. The body needs it because it's got, your lymphatic system's got to get rid of just a lot of reasons why you need, but your heart needs it, your muscles need it. Everything is set up that we are an exercise body, and then we choose not to exercise it. So exercise is important for a number of reasons. It keeps the fat down, it keeps a lot of things. But exercise is one of the two primary causes of the telomere not shrinking as fast as it can. So the other part is the nutrients. So if I have balanced nutrients on a daily basis and I'm having some level of exercise that's moderate, then I'm addressing my telomeres from a longevity perspective. If I fast on a regular basis and I keep my nutrients at the right levels, so these are all intertwined. But if I'm overweight and I'm picking out every night on food and I'm going through a 6-pack of beer, talk about alcohol. Alcohol is basically a poison to the body. It doesn't know what to do with it. So if you have, let's say you have a big meal at 7 o'clock at night, pasta, garlic bread, 4 or 5 glasses of wine, the body stops everything as soon as that wine gets in there.
So hold on. So what you're telling me, alcohol is the poison to the body.
The body doesn't recognize it as something it can be useful. So
it's bad for your health, as almost as bad as smoking.
Let's talk about the poison part first. Okay, your alcohol intake is going to stop all your digestive system. It's just going to put everything on a halt.
Okay.
You may or may not. Maybe you know somebody. Let's say that you have a really good celebratory night, and you're out and you have a few martinis or margaritas, or it doesn't matter what it is, and you come home and you've been eating. Then all of a sudden, at 3:11 in the morning, you wake up bright-eyed. That's the moment that your liver has finally processed out all of the alcohol, and now it's starting to digest all the food that you had eaten earlier. So there's a transition from when your body stopped digesting to when your body starts digesting again. Now, the same thing happens with overload of fructose from diet drinks or from Cokes and things like that. Fructose is also considered a poison in the quantities that we see it. Now, a single glass, non-issue. Be gone in a half hour, thank you very much, end of story, and we move on. But it's not that single glass or the single cookie or the single piece of pie. It's the non-moderation that we take it, where you have, that first bottle of wine tasted pretty good. I think I need another. Or, that second beer, it was pretty good. I need another one. So it's that moderation that we're not paying attention to. And so if you're looking at doing that, the body is going to handle it. But over time, that abuse, that insult, that trauma is just going to wear it out. That's another reason why fasting is so good. It allows that liver and pancreas. Okay, fine. Catch your breath.
Yeah, got you. So if you have a 3-day fast, it has now rested. And it's better. It's just like anybody, after 5 days of work, they have 2 days rest. The day number 8, when they come back to work, they're mentally sharp and focused and everything.
And you can do that on a daily basis. You sit there and you've mentioned 16 hours as a potential fasting period, intermittent fasting. The body recovers a lot in that period of time. So you don't need to go 24, 48 or longer. I do a 72-hour fast every month. I've done it now for about 3 years. I've been doing a 120-hour fast the last 5 months. So I get to my 72, and my mind says, I'm doing a 72-hour fast, Sam. I'm doing it. So I do it, but I tell myself when I'm approaching about 60 hours, I'm going to make a decision tomorrow when I get to my 72 hours, whether I'm going to go to 96 or 120. So I incrementally make a decision. Do I feel good? Is there anything going on? Do I have some commitment? Is there something out there that's going to interrupt what I have? Because if there is, then I'm going to truncate at 72 hours. Thank you very much. But on the 120-hour studies that they did at the University of Southern California, they said if you did 120-hour fast 3 months in a row, that was enough to allow the pancreas to fully recover. Well, he said, if I'm doing 72, why not do 120? To me, it's not that big a deal. I'm not suffering in any way, shape, or form. And I probably legitimately lose about 2 or 3 pounds every month, because during that period of time, I'm losing some weight. I go back to somewhat of a normal semblance of diet, not exercise so much now with COVID, but I am legitimately, and I've lost maybe 25 pounds since COVID started.
So now let me ask you a question. When you do fast, don't your body feeds on the fat that you have? I mean, what is the process? What is a chemical process, if you don't mind telling us?
Okay, you've heard about the term keto diets,
Yes,
ketogenic.
of course.
Okay, the normal process the body has, we eat our normal foods, and the carbohydrates are converted into a blood sugar, insulin's produced, and our body is working off of glycogen. Basically, it's a result of the blood sugar coming from the carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's a straight sugar or a potato or rice, a pasta, a beer, it doesn't make any difference where that's coming from. We are operating off of a sugar-based power system.
Mm-hmm.
You fast in about 24 to 36 hours, that sugar's out of your system. Your muscles are depleted of glycogen, depending on how active you are. Now, all of a sudden, the body shifts. And instead of saying, okay, I am working right now on sugar, it's going to shift over here and say, I'm going to work now on fat. So it's going to start burning fat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what ketogenic diets do. You're sitting there, 80% of your food intake is all fat.
It's fat.
And so you're allowing your body not to have any carbs. And when you're doing the non-carb routine, the body is forced to burn fat because that's the only other source it has. Now, when I started doing an Atkins diet back about 1994, and I did it for about 6.5 years, I read 5 books on Atkins before I ever started. I went on it. I loved it. I could live on 5 grams of carbs a day easily, day in, day out. I'm living in Germany for a couple of years there toward the end. And I'd go down to Italy for a weekend, pig out for a couple of days. I'd come back, I'd be 12 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I switched out of ketosis or a ketogenic lifestyle. The sugar came back into my body, and now all of a sudden it's a weight gain. It's really water weight. And 2 weeks later, I'm back down to my normal weight. So you're going to have some level of water weight loss anytime you go into a ketogenic diet because you're taking yourself off of sugar. But if you want to live on that, there's only one admonition that I'd give, and that deals with the pH that we really didn't get a chance to cover much about a while back. I said that breathing and metabolic processes and proteins and carbs and all that leave the body acidic. In other words, your pH is less than 7.4. And when you do that, all of a sudden, the blood needs to maintain a certain pH to be normal. So it'll go to the bones and extract calcium. I'm sitting here, and I've been running for decades, an hour or more daily. I lift weights, half hour or more daily. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the year 2000. I got my very first bone density test. I'm osteopenia, Sam. I said, no way in hell. It can't be. So I started doing some research. Why? Well, it turns out my pH when I was on Atkins, because of the foods I chose, eggs and cheese and meats and fats, no greens, no fruits and vegetables. Everything I was eating was acidic. So I got into acidosis. All of a sudden, extracting calcium from my bones, and now the pH of my blood's fine, but my body isn't. Acidic body has a tendency to become more risk at disease and everything else. That's why you want it alkaline. So if you can keep the alkalinity part of your body at 7.4 or above, it's not leaching it anymore. Now, people think drink milk, have healthy bones. Well, that's not the way calcium gets to the bones. If you have calcium as a source from a food as opposed to a pill, most pills, you end up in the toilet. Calcium goes straight through your body because it can't get anywhere.
So you're telling me that, so I was just thinking that while you were saying that, I'm like, well, maybe we can take a pill or something. So you're telling me.
Well, let's say you take a pill. Calcium as citrate is probably going to get in the bloodstream a whole lot faster than calcium as a carbonate. Most of the pills are calcium carbonate. So the calcium, you need to have the right kind of calcium. You need magnesium in order to get it absorbable in the stomach. It comes out of the stomach, goes to the duodenum. If you have enough vitamin D3 in your body, now all of a sudden the bloodstream is going to be grabbing that calcium as it passes through. Now here's the kicker. If you don't have enough vitamin K2 in your body, instead of going to your bones and being stronger bones, that calcium is going to go to your heart valves and arteries, and that's where it's going to be deposited as plaque. That's what you don't want. So as you're looking at getting calcium back into the bones, you need to make sure you have adequate amounts of magnesium. So if you have the right nutrients coming in, you have that. You have the calcium with the right nutrients of the food you're eating. Now, there's 2 things that I supplement on, vitamin E and vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 you can get from some greens. As vitamin K1, the body will transfer it to convert it. But I prefer to have my vitamin K2 as a pill form That way I know for sure I'm getting it on a daily basis. Otherwise, I got to eat organ meats and cheeses and things that I love cheese, but if I'm trying to stay away from keeping my body acidic, then I want to have the right kinds of things.
So let me just get this straight. So what you're telling me is diet is a big factor, and not only diet, a balanced diet. That means don't just eat meats and cheese and fatty food or something with high protein. Make sure that you have some kind of greens mixed with it, or the vegetable with color, that the color has the whole thing. So like beets, which is red, or something, you know. So you want every kind of color: yellow, red,
yellow
blue.
bell pepper.
Yes, yellow bell pepper, or what about squash?
If it's the same color all the way through, it's fine.
It has to be same color all the way through. So green bell pepper is green all the way. Yellow tomatoes, red all the way.
But not an apple.
Okay, because it's green or red outside and white inside.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. And then you said stress management is very important, right? And then you said exercise and what was the term you said? The shoelace thing you said? Telomere. So because the telomere, when you exercise, it allows your telomere not to disappear
as quickly.
But so telomere does, with age, does it go away?
Every time the cell replicates, and it's going to replicate on a pattern because that's what that cell does. Whether it's a pancreatic cell, whether it's a muscle cell, whether it's a bone cell, it's going to replicate on a certain basis.
What is the fourth one?
Which one do you have?
So I have diet, stress management, and exercise.
Toxin removal.
So now tell me something about toxin removal, and I'm very interested in knowing that. I have a question as that how important it is to remove toxins, and some people do it through, you know, we hear nowadays, you know, juice cleansing, you know, or you know, just your colon cleansing, and you know, or body cleansing, you know, where you're sitting on the toilet for hours, you know, and all of a sudden you're hurting, you can't even walk right. But I mean, so what is a good toxin removal? I mean, which one is good?
Remember when I tell you the first thing you want to do on stress is get rid of the stressor? Get out away from your wife, your boss, whatever it is, the guy in front of you. The same thing with toxin. Why allow the toxin into your body to begin with? If you can read a label and it says Carrageenan or food color number blue 3 or whatever, if you know what the toxins are just by looking. One of the things that I wrote about recently was mouthwash and how effective it is at killing the COVID SARS virus. It's extremely effective. And so I'm going out looking for products that have mouthwash that I can use at the house. And I'm looking at these things, and they have, you know, the blue color, and they have parabens. They have the stuff that I don't want to have in my body. And I'm going through label after label, and I finally find one in a clear jar. I said, okay, I'll settle on this one. I read labels like nobody's. I mean, there's nothing I don't buy that I don't read.
So you said the color food, the artificial color is probably one of the toxins.
Artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives.
What about high corn syrup, like high fructose corn syrup? Is that one of the toxin? Almost, you can say.
If you had that much of a Coca-Cola without the rum, and that's all you had over a half hour just to sip, probably not a big deal because your body can handle it. But what do we have? Supersize it?
Yeah.
64 ounces?
Yeah.
You know, your body does not normally handle that. You have so much extra sugar in there along with the fructose, and it's a major deal. So in that sense, it's not a toxin in the common sense of a toxin, but it's a toxic substance to the body because it's not something that's normal for the body.
Basically, anything you abuse is a toxin. Okay.
In a sense, yeah.
In a sense, you can say that. I mean, you know,
you could have noise be a toxin to the body. It's
Exactly.
an environmental toxin, in a sense. But it's why take it into the body if you have to get rid of it?
Gotcha.
And so if you can not take it in, then you have less of it. Your pancreas, your liver is going to process it out. That's what the liver does. And so if you're only having 10% of the toxins that you had 2 months ago, your liver's going to be in much better shape because it's not working 24/7 to get rid of all that stuff. And if you're not exercising enough to keep the excess weight off, then all of a sudden it's got more toxins coming in. It stores toxins in your fat cells because that's where it stores it at.
Right. I feel like we can have these conversations I think we might have to have different parts on this because we can go on, and I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
But everything we're talking about is in those 2 books.
In these, The Joy of Ageless Health and Longevity Secret for Healthy Aging.
So I guess I need to bring you in the other one so you have the trifecta.
Definitely. So, right, you basically, you believe that, that to fix a problem, or the cause of a problem, we have to talk about it. We have to address the issue. And you think the medical industry treats symptoms, but they don't treat causes. What causes the symptoms?
When you go to a doctor, he has a moral and legal obligation to fix a problem that he knows about. His training, everything is based on surgery or pills, because that's all they're allowed to do. They can't say, go over there and exercise and lose weight or do a stress management. That's not the normal. Why? Because if he gets up on a jury and he says, well, show me where that's the approved process. They can't do that.
They can't do that.
Because food is not a something that the FDA can test and say, this is what you... So you have to look at what the restrictions they have in their practice. And they do not treat symptom. They treat the symptom. You have something, okay, these 4 symptoms, that's probably this disease. Like, here's the manual. It says, this is what you got to do. They follow that. They don't get in trouble in the law. They don't lose their license. They don't have a problem. So, boom, 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 symptom, boom, cause, boom. That's what they're going to do. But when I look at it, how do you get calcium into the bones? Well, it's not drinking milk, because if I don't have the vitamin K2 and the D3, it's not going anywhere but the toilet. So I have to look at, to me, if I know what the cause of a problem is, I can address the cause either by inhibiting something that causes it or by forcing the good stuff that needs to happen.
Gotcha. We definitely got to have part 2 on this. And I mean, I'm going to extend the invitation to you right now, to come back in the future and let's talk more about it. But before we finish this, this interview, or we sum it up, what kind of advice will you give our audience, our listeners, about, number one, how they can maintain a healthy lifestyle? And I'm thinking one of them is that by fasting. What other advice will you give?
Okay, let's talk about a monthly fast, and let's just say 24, just a single day.
Okay.
You stop eating after breakfast today, and you don't have anything until breakfast tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that doable?
Very doable.
I think that's realistic. That's a 24-hour fast.
Yeah.
Let's say you do that once a month. Can you do that? Maybe you can do it twice a month. I don't know. Every 3 weeks. But I think a realistic fast, 24 hours, is doable for most people. Now, if you're on 3 or 4 different kinds of meds and you have issues with sugar imbalance and everything, no. If you're going to do something, check with your physician first, especially if you're on a prescription med, because you don't want to do harm to yourself by not knowing, well, had I known or had I talked to my doctor. So, number one, if you're going to change something in your life and you're on medicines right now, talk to your physician first, number one. A fast is, I think, a realistic way of going. It's not for everyone, but I think it's for the majority of people. There are some people who can't fast because of hypoglycemia or some other issues with blood sugar. So depending on what their blood sugar issues are, maybe,
check with your doctor.
Okay. Now, if you're going to eat, first thing is, let's look at labels. Know what the labels are. If you can buy organic celery versus non-organic celery, and the difference is 75 cents, why not? So be prudent in what you have, but read the labels on things. If something has a label on it, chances are you probably don't want to eat it anyway because it's in a package or a jar or a can.
Mm-hmm.
But I go to the organic section and buy my fruits and vegetables there. I go to my protein section and I'm looking for things, no preservatives, no antibiotics, no added colors, no added free range, grass-fed. So I'm looking for the things that I'm trying to eat as healthy as I can. Minimize the amount of carbohydrates. There's no essential carbohydrate that your body has to have on a daily basis. Moderation with beer, wine, anything that you're doing is in moderation. So you want to look at the foods that give you the nutrients that you need on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
That's leafy green vegetables, the colored fruits and vegetables, your sulfur-laden vegetables, and some high-quality protein. Those are the absolute minimums. You keep your calories at a minimum, caloric restriction. And if you're having more fruits and vegetables and you have proteins and fats, then generally speaking, you're going to be on the alkaline side of things. And your body's going to love being there. So those are the things. A little bit of exercise, a little bit of stress relief. Stress relief can be something as simple as just closing your eyes, letting all your muscles relax, do some visualization, sit on the beach, whatever it may happen to be, but do it often. And those are the things that, and exercise. It could be just, you're going to go out and walk for 30 minutes. It's not a big deal. You don't have to walk fast, but you're out in the sunshine, fresh air, you're away from everything. It's stress relief.
Mm-hmm.
If you have somebody with you and you can talk, whatever it is, relax, have fun, enjoy.
Gotcha.
And the biggest thing is smile more, because that's going to force those negative thoughts out of your brain.
Gotcha. Now, let's just say this is your last day on this earth. You're about to, pass on to the next world. You take all your books and everything. You're taking them with you to the next world, and you don't leave anything over here, right? And you come up with these 3 things. You leave it for the world, and these 3 things can be anything. Okay, and I know a lot has to do, what you have already said, but these 3 things is, you can say, your truths, your lessons for people, your future generation, your kids, your grandkids. What will those 3 be?
I think one, as you're doing here, never stop learning.
Okay.
I think if you're learning all the time, you're able to make better decisions. Second one, learn from your mistakes. We all make them, but as long as we're not making them over and over and over again, then we're learning, but we're also improving. And the third one, I think, is if you go through your life with a smile, chances are nobody's going to disrupt you. You're going to have a better life, better relationships with people. So I think that you continue learning all the time, learn from your mistakes, and smile as much as you can.
Smile more, smile often. I love it.
I think those are 3 things I would pass on.
I love it.
I love that question. I've never had it before.
Yeah, well, I love it, but I appreciate it. And that was a great answer. Matter of fact, the number 3 one is, I've probably never heard no one say it. I mean, I've already had a lot of guests over here, and never heard someone say just smile more and smile often. And smiling more and smiling often is the answer for a lot of things. Just when you smile more, I think it's better health. Yeah. And like you have said,
you're watching some kind of thing on TV and it's dramatic, and if you smile, all of a sudden you're going to see it through a different set of eyes that you're looking at.
For sure.
Because it's not going to, the emotional thing is not going. But the biggest thing is you need to go away from the TV set, so you don't see it. Walk into another room. You're grabbing a hold of something and holding on to it that you don't need to do. And if you don't need to do it, why are you doing it?
And like you said earlier in your interview, that smile is also a stress reliever. Get away from the stress. Red, I really appreciate you coming over here. I'm hoping that you'll join me again in the future.
Absolutely. I look forward
future
to
episodes, because there's so much we can talk about it. I mean, we've been over here for about over an hour, and I feel like we just scratched the surface, and we're just scratching the surface.
And we only talked about 5 years of my life.
That's it. Well, thank you so much, Red. I appreciate it, and I hope you come back and see me soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you so very much, Sam.